of today's webinar. We envisage to have 90 minutes for our conversation. There is room for question and answers. And in case we need less time for the question and answers, then of course we can also finish earlier. But let's see, we have a nice group of very knowledgeable speakers lined up for this webinar. So we kickstart now. And I want to move to the next slide so that we can start setting the scene. We are hosting this webinar as philea, and those of you who don't know philea, Philanthropy Europe Association, galvanizes collective action of the philanthropic sector, and it amplifies the voice of European philanthropy. Philea, we have more than 300 members reaching out through our national networks of foundations to around 7,500 foundations. Our policy and enable work, the work that I'm leading, focuses on two goals. First of all, philanthropy should thrive in an enabling environment, and the community is well connected to other stakeholders. And here, of course, this webinar is also part of our reach out to the wider constituency and stakeholders. So I'm very happy that you are joining for this and that we can create new links with you as participants of this webinar. We have a legal affairs committee, which is guiding our work around policy and the enabling environment for philanthropy. We have 23 national networks and also 9 foundation representatives within our legal affairs committee and additional experts joining. We do mapping and analysis of what is happening in terms of the laws, regulations at the national level, European level, and international level. We issue country profiles. You can find them on our website. They will be updated in December this year. And we've also done some collection of case studies of how philanthropic actors engage in cross-border activities and what barriers they potentially experience. Our conclusion of this mapping and analysis of the laws and regulations and the practice is that there are unfortunately old and new barriers hampering philanthropy, while the need for philanthropy to contribute to working towards a society that works for people and the planet is ever more demanding. So unfortunately, we do not yet have a single market for philanthropy, and it's not yet a level playing field for actors of public good within the single market. And because of that, we as philea and our partners, we have come up with some policy recommendations, how we think that policy should change to provide for a better enabling environment for philanthropy. Our European Manifesto, you can download it here. It aims to empower philanthropy. Philanthropy needs good enabling frameworks. It also aims to facilitate cross-border philanthropy, and it wants to establish dialogue of philanthropic actors with policymakers, and it wants to also enable philanthropy and foundations to partner with others for public good. Today's webinar will focus on our second ask, which is facilitate cross-border philanthropy. And I have the pleasure now to hand over to Ludwig to make the case for a single market for philanthropy. We see that there is a real momentum right now, also on the side of the policymakers, and we hope that this webinar can contribute for us to make the case for urgent action to be needed. And we have seen that already at the level of the European Union, there's a lot of action happening. We've seen a social economy action plan, and we have today also speakers from the European Commission who will bring you up to speed on the latest developments there. The social economy action plan published in 2021, then also Council recommendations for the social economy, also wanting to overcome barriers for cross-border philanthropy, and also then a new proposal in the pipeline about a cross-border association, an ECBA proposal. So you see and sense there is a real momentum right now, which we want to build upon with this webinar and contribute to the discussion to make sure that there is now best use of this momentum, and that we can discuss with you also what you can do to contribute to creating This important as we see it single market for philanthropy and an equal leveling playing field for our sector. We have also seen that there are foreign funding restrictions now being introduced in several national jurisdictions. And this is, of course, a very unfortunate development as we see it. And we've seen also that there's a lot of barriers to cross-border giving. And today we will focus exactly on this, on the cross-border giving of philanthropy. And it's my true pleasure to now hand over to Ludwig Forrest. He's the Chief Philanthropy Officer at the King Baudouin Foundation, and he's also, as a matter of fact, the co-chair of our Legal Affairs Committee. So a warm welcome to you, Ludwig, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hannah. And thank you for the introduction. Thank you to everyone that is present today and that will listen later to this webinar. I will start to explain why the King Baudouin Foundation is here today. What is our motivation? I will make some hypotheses, and I will work a little bit on the momentum you highlighted, Hannah. So KBF, King Baudouin Foundation and its Center for Philanthropy, we are, since 2 decades, we are active at local, at Belgium, at European, and at international level. Very much, we are contacted more and more at European and international level, and that's one of the reasons that motivated us to work on the guide I will present you. As you know, we have been a founding partner and very, very active member of the Transnational Giving Europe network that provides already a kind of solution to the single market for philanthropy, and where Anne-Laure will have the pleasure later to speak and to tell us where we stand with this great and fabulous network that provides a kind of interim solution to the single market for philanthropy. Recently, we launched at King Baudouin Foundation, we launched the Myriad Europe brand. Why? To be part of the global Myriad Giving Alliance, Borderless Giving Alliance, where we have representative in Canada, in the US, Myriad Europe, in Australia, in New Zealand, in China, in Hong Kong, and soon in other countries, to boost cross-continental philanthropic endeavors. And then last but not least, our motivation to be here today is because we, since also quite a long time, we are supporting philea's efforts to try to move things at European level and to represent the sector for advocating for a much more enabling environment. The hypothesis I will make is that philanthropy is complementary, is innovative, and is agile. I think, and I hope that we all agree that philanthropy is much more needed at local, European, and international level. I hope we are agreeing in that. In these troubled times, people that working in philanthropy know that the bridges that philanthropy is building between some countries and also some continents are more than ever important. Especially you said it, Hannah, with the funding restrictions and so on. Bridges of philanthropy is important. And what do we want to do? We want to allow good people to do good things. We are not naive. We know that there are also some bad people wanting to do bad things, but only taking those into account would be an error, because there are much more good people that want to do good things than bad people that want to do bad things. And so we have to help those that really want to save the world. The momentum, Hannah highlighted it. There are many things happening at EU level, and I'm sure Albert and Mia will tell us more later today. There is a clear philanthropic wave. People want to do things, companies want to do things, employees of companies want to do things, families, younger generations want to do things in their country, but also internationally. And there was the first 6 months of the year, there was the Belgian presidency that had a conversation with the King Baudouin Foundation and said, look, could you address the high-level working party on tax questions on the single market for philanthropy, which we accepted several months before the Belgian presidency and which triggered the work that we did by creating this guide towards a single market for philanthropy. And we can go to the next slide if you want. In fact, I say the guide, but there are two publications. We issued a questionnaire putting asking the questions to know in each of the 27 member states of the EU, what is the situation with the single market for philanthropy? How easy is it to register? Can donors make legacies? Can donors make donations directly to a EU-based organizations, or is that still difficult? And for that, once this questionnaire was constructed, we worked with Lex Mundi, represented by Liedekerke in Belgium, but many other law office in the 27 EU member states, and we asked them to answer this questionnaire. So very high level information, very high level quality of answers, and we put it all those 27 answers on the questionnaires, 316 pages, I think, in what you see on your right, the guide towards a single market for philanthropy. So if you have a question, if you would like to know how you should do in Sweden, in Ireland, in Belgium, in Luxembourg, go to this guide. This is freely at disposal on our website. When I will have finished my presentation, I will put the link in the chat. But there you will find really very relevant information. On the left, on your left of your screen, you see the State of the Union. There we draw some conclusions out of the results of those 27 questionnaires. Out of those 16 pages, we draw some conclusions to see how can we move with this. And we can go to the next slide. So what did we see? We see that there are still two best students in Europe, the Netherlands and Luxembourg. If you have donors in the Netherlands and the Luxembourg, good news, it will be very easy for you or for them to help you in tax effective ways. And those are the two countries that are the best responding to the criteria of a single market for philanthropy. We saw that in different member states, you have different ways to be approved. You have to register, you have to be approved, you have to be agreed, you have just to prepare some kinds of defense file if the fiscal administration would ask you a question. And in some countries, there is nothing. No way of getting donations out of the country with tax benefits for the donor living in that country. So a very diverse scenarios, and no streamlined procedure in the 27 EU member states. Comparability remains important. The non-discrimination principle is key to move things forward, and I imagine my colleagues will talk more about that, but that's quite clear. Good news, there have been recently many improvements in many member states. We are thinking about Germany, that it opened a register for foreign organizations. We are thinking about several countries like the Czech Republic, like Estonia, where indeed you just have to be ready to prepare some things, your bylaws, your mission, your vision, and so on. Should you receive a question after a donation from an Estonian donor, from a Czech Republic donor, even in Spain, that was the way it was foreseen, that you have to have something ready if you receive a question. So good improvements. So we concluded, as you see, that we are closer than ever to a real single market for cross-border philanthropy. We made this conclusion with one hope, that is that the theory would be confirmed by the practice. You will see what is the answer to this hope. We can go to the next slide, because we also saw that there were way forwards at member state level, at EU level, and for the sector. At member state level, there can be more and better information, trainings of national administrations, bilateral treaties, multilateral treaties. Those are all ways that could be forward. Implementation of what the EU, what the Commission and the EU Parliament is proposing. At EU level, we could dream of some kind of central place where organizations in Europe can register with a severe due diligence, but once you are on it, you could receive donations from everywhere. We can continue to work on the topics that were highlighted by Hannah and that will be by Mia and by Albert. So there are also many things. And at the sector level, there, King Baudouin Foundation, we decided to do one important thing. Three important things, four important things. We decided to continue to support Philea, of course, in their advocacy efforts. We decided to continue to support TGE in their development efforts. Myriad, I talked about it, but we also decided to go on the very practical way towards this single market for philanthropy and to launch the quest to be registered, approved, have a defense file in the different EU member countries. Today, King Baudouin Foundation is agreed in France, registered in the Netherlands, approved in Luxembourg, approved in Denmark, and Oriane will tell you everything about it in a few seconds. We decided to do this and to test ourselves the way to get approved, agreed, and so on in other countries. Unfortunately, practice is a little bit more complicated than theory. You will see that in the first countries where we tried. But we are not découragés, you say in French. We are not. We are moving forward. And what we do is we are allowing us 2 to 3 years to get through those approvals all around Europe. And we are collecting the data, the information to know how easy it is or how difficult it is. And when it is not that easy, we are collecting the data to see what did we have to do to get there. And that will be the next publication or in this project together with Philea, TGE, Myriad, and so on. That is to share this information. Because what's the vision of KBF? We want to do it. We want to pave the way as the first one to do it in the 27 countries. After that, we hope that we will embrace with the information that we will provide by 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 others. And then from 10, we will move from 100. And the day that there will be 100 that will have gone through the processes, I think it will be much more easier to go really to this real single market for philanthropy. So that's the conclusion I had. And maybe, Oriane, maybe I can give you the word and to say where we are standing now with the registrations, the agreements, the approvals in the country where we started. We did not start with all of them, but it's some way we started, and you will see how sometimes easy or how sometimes less easy it is than expected. Oriane, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ludwig. So my task is to try the process because on paper it seems possible to be registered or to get the tax incentives in all the countries in Europe. Now, I wanted to make the test, and I wanted to go through the process and to learn from our experience, and then to be able to share our experience with the sector. So KBF is now registered in 5 countries, the Benelux, France, and Denmark. Next steps for us are Austria, Spain, Italy, Sweden, Germany, and the Czech Republic. And so, of course, the goal will be in a couple of years to have tried all the countries and to see where it works, where it can be improved, and to try to open doors when it can be done. I highlighted some of the challenge, the unresolved questions I have as of today. Those are qualifications questions, cost policies, activity threshold, earning management, required documents, location strategies, attorney's fees, translations. There are some of the questions I have. I will go through them with the countries, and I hope it will be more it will talk to you a bit more when I explain the questions country to country. And so I will start with Austria, because Austria since January has a new register for foreign NPOs. So it is possible for foreign NPOs to register in Austria. And so, of course, we want to be the first ones to test it. And in May, they published a PDF guidelines on how to do it, what was explained to me later is that our legal counsel, the council, when it register, it fulfill the form, it has to tick a box saying that King Baudouin Foundation complies with the Austrian laws. So in fact, the comparability text we have to make here in Austria shifts from the administration to the legal counsel, who has to take responsibility for the KBF in Austria. So of course, they have to be able to do their homework, and it leads to a lot of questions to make sure we are complying with Austrian law. So the first question was technicality, because our bylaws are not excluding profit orientation activities. So I think it will not be a basis to reject our application, but it's a legal requirement, so it could be actually. Second question we have are for the commercial operations from the KBF, because it is not impossible to have some commercial operations at KBF, but it has to be subordinate to the main charitable activity. So for example, we have a museum. The museum in itself is not a problem, but what can be said about, for example, ticketing? Is it a subordinate activity to the museum? Is it okay or is it not okay? What can be said about the shop, what we are selling in the shop? What can be said about events and catering we offer at the museum? Is it detrimental to the charitable qualification of the KBF? If it qualifies as a subordinate economic activity, then we have to match a threshold from the 10% of our overall income. That means that we have to review all our activities and make sure that we are not exceeding 10% of our total income with the economic activities. Of course, we have questions about, for example, political purpose. So how do we consider philanthropy, the promoting philanthropy we do? How do we consider some other activities? For example, we are giving loans to some companies to help them start their activity on some specific activities. And how do we stand on passing on funds, because it is considered as a secondary purpose. It is our main activity, so we have to make sure each time we pass funds on other organizations that all those organizations matches the definition of charitable activity regarding Austrian law. So internally, we have to make sure that we are complying with the Austrian law for each organization we are wanting to support. So it will be a challenge for us. Last question I think we have for Austria is on the next slide. It is the overhead costs. It is a question in a lot of countries. So regarding Belgian law, we should not exceed 20% administrative costs for all the income we have from donation and inheritance. In Austria, it is 10%. In Spain, it is 30%. So I've done the calculation for 2024 for the KBF. We are around 13% overhead costs. So we are efficient in Spain and we are efficient in Belgium, but we are not efficient in Austria. So that is also a question I have to find an answer to in order to get through the process in Austria. Second country I have tried and I experienced some difficulties is Spain. One of the questions is not specific to Spain. It also exists in other countries, is that the board members of the KBF cannot be remunerated. So as it is, KBF board members are doing it on a pro bono basis. That's not a problem. But the problem raises when we consider our CEO, because it is his full-time job. So he is remunerated for his job. And we have to make our case to the Spanish administration that we can comply with the definition of the law in Spain. Second question, Spain wants a specific reporting from our activities. And the documents I have given our legal counsel so far are not sufficient on some topics, so we have to redraft them to make sure we are complying with all the requirements of Spanish law. So it is paperwork and it is a great work, but we are working on it, and I hope I will get through it shortly on this matter. As for Italy, in Italy, the question is that the comparability test is not done on a national level, it's done on a local level. So we have actually to determine which prefecture in Italy is competent to give us the comparability we need. We need in Italy an operating office, and we need in Italy someone who is representing the KBF. It doesn't exist today, so I'm stuck in Italy today. But if you have any solutions for me, please let me know after this webinar. Thank you. Next country I tried is Sweden. In Sweden, we decided to stall because the attorney's fees are a little bit higher than in other countries. The question is, of course, not do we need to pay fees? That's not a question, but I just want to highlight that in some cases, attorney fees can have an impact on the strategic decision we make to go forward in a country or in another. And in this case, we decided to stall in Sweden for that question. That question, yes. Germany also put online a new register in January 2024, and we were able to file our registration. So it is now pending. I'm awaiting a decision from the tax administration. I hope I will have a positive answer soon, but I know from experience in other countries that it can take a lot of time. So to be continued in Germany. And yes, the last country I was working on is the Czech Republic. The Czech Republic is not a comparability test beforehand, so we had to draft a tax certificate to give to the taxpayer in the Czech Republic, and they are complying with the Czech tax law, and we have to wait to see if they have some questions from the tax administration and to see how we can respond. So now it's wait and see actually, because it is a post-tax control in the Czech Republic, but we have drafted a certificate for this country as well. So I think I have gone through all the countries on my part.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ariane. And indeed, we need the King Baudouin Foundation as a true pioneer in this field, testing out what the rules are and what the practices are and how difficult it is. I think that's what your presentation highlighted, absolutely how difficult it is also to get this equivalency determination and the registration process getting as a foreign-based organization, public benefit organization in other EU member states. So while the theory works in practice, it's still very complicated. And of course, if you can imagine, the King Baudouin Foundation is a large player, but for smaller organizations and for individual donors, that is a real struggle. So we hope that also the work that the King Baudouin Foundation is doing through this process can then pave the way and can make it easier for others to go this path and to truly enable cross-border philanthropy. Now, I want to hand over to Lucia to also highlight a little bit from the experience that was also collected by some of the work that we did as philea and TG.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I'll be presenting today a few case studies from a publication which was released in May 2024 by philea and by the Transnational Giving Europe, TGE. The publication really showcases a series of examples of concrete existing barriers to cross-border philanthropy, and it provides real-world examples of impacted foundations and donors, delving also into the broader legal and fiscal context which is behind each barrier. In terms of methodology, the publication was based on a survey which we conducted as philea and TGE among our membership, among our networks, as well as national level experts in foundation law across Europe. And it showed, also here the link to access the publication. So it really showed how foundations and donors encounter barriers in 6 main areas, which are also the areas where philanthropy faces, as a matter of fact, difficulty in acting across border based on our publications in this area. We've highlighted here the main barriers, which are the discriminatory tax treatment, first and foremost, and the complex procedures, the difficulties in accessing banking services, the lack of legal recognition of foreign foundation, as well as the burdensome process to move a seed across border and also for foundations to merge across border. Other barriers derive importantly from restrictions on foreign funding, which we increasingly witness today. And last but not least, we have also tightening registration and reporting requirements, for example, in the field of anti-money laundering and countering the fight of terrorism, with lengthy information being asked to foundations with regards to beneficial ownership. We can move on to the next slide. Thank you. And here we highlighted really two examples of barriers which we reported in this publication. They're related to taxation, as taxation is the most frequently listed barriers by our survey respondents. But really feel free to also delve into the other barriers and to the other cases which are reported in our publication, as there are many beyond taxation. Focusing on this area and two concrete examples, we have an example in the area of the tax treatment of donors giving across borders. Here we had a German individual who reported wanting to deduct a 10,000 donation to a Greek organization that supports Greek students in the field of classical music. And this application was rejected because the activities of the organization did not meet either of Germany's comparability requirements, namely that the organization supports individuals who have their permanent residence in Germany, or the activities could benefit Germany's reputation. In another area, also related to tax, which is the area of non-resident foundations and philanthropic organizations investing part of their endowments across border, we had foundations such as Volkswagen, based in Germany, reporting on cumbersome procedures related to their asset allocation across borders and difficult efforts to claim back withholding tax which they had paid on dividends. Concretely, the main difficulties faced by the Volkswagen foundations concerned the absence of standard requirements across country for the recognition of a public benefit organization as comparable to those in the relevant country. The fact that the documents to make refund claims were very different across countries, the high cost to make these refund claims, which amounted for Volkswagen Foundation to around 1.4 million euros, which raises the issue of which possibility there is for smaller foundations with less resources to make these type of claims. And last but not least, the length of time for proceedings, which in this case amounted to almost 20 years. So 20 years to have a decision with regards to the request to claim back their withholding tax paid on dividends. So clearly, these cases, which are only two, but also the other cases which we reported in the publication related to tax, but also related to other areas, really show how, despite the fact that the European Court of Justice has recognized that foreign EU-based public benefit organizations and their donors cannot be excluded from eligibility for tax privileges if set aside they fulfill all the requirements of the national public benefit tax law. So in one word, the ECJ has recognized the non-discrimination principle on the basis of nationality, which has been stated in several cases, including the Persia judgment, mission work, and Stauffer cases. And that in these cases, member states must carry out a comparability test. In practice, this does not always work, as in practice, in many cases, legislators and authorities still discriminate against comparable foreign EU-based philanthropic players, resulting in a number of tax barriers. In terms of concrete outputs of this publication, which again really shows how barriers to cross-border philanthropy are real and tangible and cause passionate citizens and public benefit organizations to miss out and to struggle to contribute to the public good as they wish to do, the publication ends with the concrete steps suggested, first of all, by survey respondents. So very practical steps which our survey respondents wish to see implemented in practice and policy, and recommendations then to policymakers, which we have made to remove obstacles to cross-border philanthropy in line with the Philea European Philanthropy Manifesto, which Hannah Surmes has presented at the beginning of the webinar.
Thank you so much, Lucia. And as we can see, so there's a lot of evidence right now to showcase that it's very complicated, very costly, and burdensome to deal with cross-border philanthropy. It's both related to the giving side, where donors really struggle with giving in a tax-effective way cross-border, and it's also for the organizations themselves to get the recognition. So this is in a way, well, what we discovered is of course disappointing that so many years after the important European Court of Justice cases, it's still not yet working in practice. But we sense also that it's a great momentum since, as Ludwig has highlighted, there is already very positive change happening at the national level. So member states are becoming more aware of this, and maybe we can discuss also in the Q&A section later on what we can do also to promote this idea of cross-border philanthropy at the national level to ensure that member states do provide for easier processes. Now, in the meantime, while we still have complicated rules and administrative hurdles, translation of documents requires very costly procedures, we sense that, it's not impossible to give a cross-border, and we do have some private initiatives. Ludwig referred already to Transnational Giving Europe as one of the examples of a private initiative developed to channel funds in a tax-effective way cross-border. And I'm very pleased to now invite Anne-Laure Pacaud to present the Transnational Giving Europe agreement to all of you, so that you can learn about the practical initiatives set up by the sector itself.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for this invitation. So if I can steal your word, TG was very much designed as a in the meantime solution, whilst the EU get itself together and we finally have a single market for philanthropy, easily approachable and effective. But this in the meantime solution has been around since the 90s, so we're getting on a bit on in terms of age. So TG, Transnational Giving Europe, was set up by a core member of foundations, of which the King Baudouin Foundation was part of for the Belgian, with the intent of facilitating and really opening the doors of cross-border giving, tax efficient and secure, to European-based donors and charities. So that's the core of what we do on an everyday basis, although sometimes we also dabble into advocacy activities together with our partner philea, like you just saw in the case studies that Lucia presented. But on an everyday basis, what our 19 members do, and we are present in 19 European countries, is to really make cross-border giving a possibility for any interested individual or corporate donors. So we work together with European-based charities. Sorry, if we can go back just for one more second, with European charities to help them collect donations across European countries in a different, ways, making it easy and accessible for them to deal with such donations, as TG partners carry out all the administrative formalities relating to the tax deductibility of gifts. So if we have a charity based in Belgium, they don't have to wonder about what kind of tax incentive or tax or reporting administrative steps they have to take if they have a donor in Italy, in Germany, or in Switzerland. Similarly, for the donors, we are present to really help them make their generosity a possibility if they want to do so cross-border. So we are there to answer their questions. We are there to help them, deal with tax administration, providing them with tax receipt, and making sure that their donations are made in an efficient but also secure manner, as we'll show, I think, in the next slide. Yes, so how does it work? Well, the TG network really relies on a strong principle of due diligence. So any charity that receives a donation facilitated through International Giving Europe has to go through a double due diligence step in their home country and in the donor country. And once that is done, the process that takes place is as described here. I take the example of a donor based in Belgium who might want to give back to their alma mater in Italy. So let's take Bocconi University. How will they make their donation, cross-border donation, a possibility? Well, first, the Belgian donor will reach out to our Belgian TG partner, King Baudouin Foundation, who will receive the donation, will transfer it, make a grant to Bocconi University, knowing it has been validated, and then provide the donor with a Belgian fiscal receipt abiding by all the Belgian fiscal regulations. So that means for the donor, there is only a single point of contact within the entire network, and that's the King Baudouin Foundation. So they can interact in French, in Dutch, whichever language they are more comfortable. And similarly for Bocconi University, the point of contact will be your partner in Italy. And at the end of the day, Bocconi received their donation from Belgium as easily as it was made by an Italian donation. And for the Belgian donor, they can make their donation cross-border as easily as if they were supporting a charity next door. So here I've given an example of some of the charities we work with. I think by now we're getting closer and closer to the 2,000 European charities mark that have been onboarded and validated through TGE. But really, our aim and goal is to be as accessible and as democratizing as possible for European charities. So we work with very small organizations that are really, local and very implanted, on the ground, to large-scale NGOs, universities, museums, so across the spectrum, across all kinds of sectors. Since 2007, we have channeled to almost 200 million euros. So it's a drop of water when we look at the figures for, European generosity, etc. But it's an important one because it makes giving easy and accessible to European donors. So in 2023, we facilitated a bit more than 20 million euros from a bit more than 1,000 corporate individual donors. And what we really see there is a trend of recurring donations. So, donors who give 1 year and really want to continue supporting the charity of their heart abroad because they found a solution that is easy and accessible for them. So there is no longer an impediment to their cross-border giving generosity. We channel donations to 529 charities out of the 1,700 currently registered. And what we saw last year compared to previous years is really an increase in the number of charities making use of TG as a solution to help them in their European fundraising. Beyond the facilitation of bank transfers and check and those kind of donations, we also launched a transnational giving platform, which we really conceived and implemented as a catalog of European nonprofit organizations that are validated by Transnational Giving Europe as a charity that can receive cross-border donation through us. So it was really a tool that we developed to further promote and support the collection of donations by European charities. And this has been instrumental in our ability to support and provide help during times of crisis and emergencies. We have unfortunately seen a very concrete application of this recently with the Valencia floods. So within a number of hours, we were present with our Spanish partner to really pool donations coming in from across Europe to support the charities on the ground that were requiring additional help to deal with the emergency. So the fact that we have this European-wide network, it means that we can really support large-scale fundraising appeals during those difficult times, as well as donors' generosity, because oftentimes they come knocking on our door saying, how can I help? Where can I give? How can you support us? So we saw that during COVID when TG was a partner of WHO Fund and Foundation. Then at the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine, again, we partnered with our Polish, Slovak, and Hungarian partners to pool donations, redistributing them to charities that they know and have validated on the ground. And then, like I said, recently in Spain. So yes, that's in a few words what TG does and how we try to be there to support the work towards a single market for philanthropy on an everyday basis.
Thank you, Anne-Laure. Thank you so much for sharing the overview. And there was one concrete question, just because it refers to the TGE. It was Clea Ferguson. I do not know, Clea, if you want to pose your question yourself, then you can unmute yourself.
Hi, yeah, thank you. It was just to ask if legacy fundraising can be done via TGE. Because we see quite a lot of major donors that have got assets in different countries, and that can be complicated in terms of providing advice on legacy. So yeah, just any thoughts on that?
So it's a possibility, in the sense that I would then refer you to the TGE partners involved in your case. Like if you are based in UK and the donor is based in Germany, then I would say we can put you in touch with our TGE partners to see if a solution can be found. On an everyday basis, the core of our work is to facilitate, bank transfers and card donations, etc. But we have had indeed instances and cases of legacy giving through TGE. So definitely, if there is such a case, we can put you in touch with the right people.
Great. So legacies can also be facilitated through TGE. Thank you so much. And yes, I've noted down some other questions, and they're not forgotten, so that we will come back to that in a moment in the Q&A session. But I would now like to give the floor. We heard now about from the sector representatives about how they experience the difficulty, the barriers with regard to cross-border philanthropy, that the rules do not yet work in practice, and really it is a barrier to giving, and it's a barrier of our sector to contribute to the public good. So let's hear, I indicated earlier on that there is positive movements, there is a real momentum here. Let's hear from the European Commission, and I have the pleasure to first give the floor to Mia Rossi-Gray from DG Ample, and she will highlight a little bit what the European Commission has been cooking up over the past years to move the agenda. Thank you, and over to you, Mia.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. Thank you very much for the introduction. So yeah, my name is Mia Rossi-Gray. I work in DG Employment of the European Commission. I'm the team leader for social economy in a unit that deals with the social economy action plan, as well as the social window of the InvestEU. And I'm really here to set the broad political context, the policy context for the work of the European Commission on this issue. So we're moving from the practicalities that the sector is encountering to broad policy lines, where the big policy initiative for us is the Social Economy Action Plan, which was adopted in 2021. At this point, I'd like to recall that, of course, foundations and philanthropic organizations, they're considered part of this. So either foundations themselves are considered part of social economy. When we define social economy, foundations are explicitly recognized to be part of it. But also many philanthropic entities and foundations act as funders of social economy organizations. So the Social Economy Action Plan is very relevant for the institutional philanthropy for this reason. So the Social Economy Action Plan is really the European Commission's guiding compacts for supporting the social economy in Europe and beyond. And almost 3 years have now passed since it was adopted. And the action plan is all about actions to support social economy at the EU level. It contains 63 actions that would be taken to support social economy, and the vast majority of these have been kick-started or nearly complemented already. We're really starting to see some results from these efforts. And the Commission adopted the action plan because political support is crucial to create the right conditions for social economy. And social economy, of course, has many positive societal impacts. And it's also a significant economic force in terms of employment and so on. So one of the key actions from the Social Economy Action Plan was a Council recommendation on developing social economy framework conditions. This was adopted by the Council, so by the Member States, in November last year. And like I mentioned, the action plan contains actions at the EU level, but the Council recommendation contains recommendations for EU member states to take actions at the national level to support social economy. The EU does not have competence in all the policy areas. For instance, taxation, which is very important and has been discussed also today. And this is why the European Commission decided to adopt this recommendation to support development of social economy. It's a significant milestone because it was the first time a legal act was adopted at the EU level specifically to support social economy. It contains various recommendations to member states on social and employment policies, funding access, public procurement, state aid, taxation, including taxation, data and statistics, and other topics. And it asks member states to adopt strategies for the social economy by the end of next year. And these strategies should at least take into consideration all the aspects of the recommendation. And there is a specific paragraph in the recommendation regarding taxation. It is recommended to member states that take measures to ensure that taxation systems do not hinder the development of social economy and whether they sufficiently encourage its development. It also invites member states to develop tax incentives for the social economy if these are not already granted. There are some examples of these. Corporate tax exemptions, for instance, on profits retained by social economy entities, and also income tax incentives in the form of deductions or tax credits. There's also tax exemptions on unemployment benefits to facilitate business transfers to worker cooperatives. There's also a recommendation to review the tax compliance burden for social economy entities. There's also a recommendation to facilitate compliance on a practical level for public benefit cross-border donations for taxation purposes. For instance, by issuing a standardized form of the recipient entity established in another member state on the amount of the donation. And my colleague Albert will speak more in a minute, and he can talk more about this. Finally, of course, in the recommendation, it is recalled that member states should ensure that social economy entities are not used for tax evasion or tax avoidance. So that is really what the Council recommendation states about tax issues. The European Commission is now working with the member states to support them in the implementation of this recommendation. For example, we are organizing mutual learning workshops for public officials on various subjects. We had some already regarding state aid and also on the development of these strategies, but we actually have specific ones regarding the topic of taxation, which will take place between February and May next year. So all the guidance material that is produced during these workshops will be also made available afterwards on the EU Social Economy Gateway. So that is the context. We are indeed, taxation was covered in the recommendation. We're trying to support member states in the implementation of all the parts of the recommendation, including taxation. We are already seeing some development at the member state level, where they are developing strategies and planning improvements to their legal frameworks for social economy. Just to conclude, before I pass the floor to Albert, I would like to recall that the Commission is planning to also take stock of the implementation of the action plan next year. And we intend to publish a report that indicates progress in the implementation of the action plan. And there will be a broader consultation on this. Overall, the action plan sets us a time horizon until the end of 2030, which kind of sets a concrete path for us to support social economy. And for the Council recommendation that I just highlighted, this implementation will also be monitored through a formal process. So member states are going to be requested to report to the Commission on their progress of implementing this recommendation by the end of 2027 and again in 2032. So that is really where we are also working closely with stakeholders and encouraging them to work with the member states on developing the right conditions for social economy to grow and thrive. Thank you very much for your attention, and it was a pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you very much, Mia, for giving us an overview and an update on the important work that has been done and is ongoing around the Social Economy Action Plan, the Council recommendations, and indeed potentially offering also you as the participants good entry points to discuss with your governments and to ensure that that implementation is followed through also at the national level. Now, I have the pleasure to hand over to Albert Redler from DG TaxUD to share his perspective and what DG TaxUD has been doing around exactly this element of cross-border philanthropy taxation. And over to you, Albert. Okay, Albert, can you hear us? I cannot see or hear you. Okay. Albert, maybe you have to dial in again. Maybe there is a technical issue because we checked the technicalities in the beginning of the webinar. So I suggest, we start to open up then for some questions and answers while Albert will try to rejoin the conversation. Yes, there were some questions indeed posed in the chat already related to, for example, Sorol, I don't know whether you want to pose the question there. It was about how much time it takes. If you want to come in to pose your question, Soror, then it's fine. You can unmute yourself and pose the question.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for this presentation. My question was actually based on the experience of King Baudouin Foundation. If a new foundation, if a foundation that is new to TGE wants to join the platform and the network, how much time is needed to calculate to go through this procedure of getting the validation in each country? I understand that there are different realities, but in my case, I was imagining that it couldn't take more than 6 months or 1 year in the worst case. So I guess it is not a realistic point, and I would like if you can develop a little bit on the timing aspect of this procedure for new members. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I sense this is a question potentially to Oriane and also Anne-Laure, because they have been dealing with also the validation process there. Maybe first to Anne-Laure.
Yes, so if you're talking strictly about getting registered as a TGE charity, so receiving donations through the TGE network, then I would say it takes between a month and 2, depending on the number of countries you want to get validation from and the type of organizations you are, provided you provide all the documentations we ask for. But yeah, it's definitely not 6 months or a year. It's much shorter than that, and we work together with the charities to make it a very smooth process. But like I said, this is strictly for getting registered as a TG user. Now, if it's beyond that scope, getting registered within a country's fiscal administration, then I'm handing over to Orkian.
Well, for being registered in different countries, it depends if you have to get comparability beforehand or if it happens afterwards. Because if it happens afterwards, it's just a matter of getting the proper tax certificates and to follow the rules in your own country to get the tax incentives. If it's beforehand, it depends from one country to the other. I don't have very much quick wins as for now. So, for example, in France, we have a renewal procedure for the agreement, and we filled in the renewal papers in June, and we don't have any answer yet. So it is not a surprise. It's normal, that kind of delay, but we are after 6 months, and I don't have any feedback from the administration on that point. For Germany, we filed the forum in the summer, and we are now in November, and the lawyers do not have any feedback on it. So I think 6 months is a minimum, and I think it can take over a year. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So maybe we can, I hear also that, can we check again? Albert, can you join us now to speak and share your views from DG TaxSuit?
Albert, can you please unmute yourself? I can see you now under the name of Ute Kallenberger, but you're muted. Thank you. Yeah, somehow we can still not hear you. So there might be an issue with the microphone you've selected. On the left-hand side next to audio, you can select your microphone. You are unmuted now, but maybe the microphone is not the correct one.
Okay, while still some of the technical issues get sorted, I would like then to also invite Isabel Peñalosa. She's co-chair of the Legal Affairs Committee next to Ludwig Forrest, to share some latest updates from the situation in Spain. While we hope that Albert can then connect and speak afterwards. Isabel, over to you.
Well, thank you, Hannah. Hello, everybody. Well, more than sharing changes in Spain, because as many of you have heard, we have an amendment of our law that is recognizing now foreign-based NPOs, or better, foreign-based foundations that can be eligible for the donations of Spanish taxpayers, and also can benefit these foreign-based foundations from the tax-exempt status that applies to Spanish foundations. This in practice is very, very complicated. I would like to add a couple of questions or to precise something that we are leading with this recognition of comparable foreign-based organizations, NPOs, or foreign-based or comparable foreign-based foundations, is that we have we have many requirements for Spanish foundations to be tax exempt, okay? But this is not only the difficulty. The difficulty is that for our tax authorities, foundations have to apply or spend their resources directly. I mean that in these cases that you are donating or a foundation is donating to another foundations and it's not applying to their own programs, these donations that are receiving, this can exclude the first foundation from the tax exempt status. It's a very tiny and a very close and it's not a realistic approach of what the sector is doing, because grant-making foundations do precisely this. They are having or collecting funds or managing their endowment and giving the resources to other operational activities here or abroad, okay? But they are basically donating. So we are fighting against this criteria with tax authorities. We have some court decisions that have been decided in favor of foundation sector, because the law just says that NPOs have to follow, to be general interest or public benefit, but literally the law does not say if you have to do it direct or indirect. But this is one of the main problems that we are facing, and that in terms of the TGE structure, I think that we have shared previously in the past years, that it's like I mean, it's not a problem or not a huge problem, but can put at risk some of these cross-border mechanisms. Anyway, in theory, a Spanish taxpayer, if they are paying to a foreign-based foundation that can be comparable, it can be deductible in the same way that if the donation was made to a Spanish NPO. But what I wanted to stress today, and I was sharing the other day with Hannah, is that unfortunately this, you know, the case in Valencia, the cold drop that has devastated a huge area of Valencia, is a very good case or a very good example of cross-border philanthropy, because from the very beginning of these situations, foundations in Valencia have received offers of donations from different countries, different donors as well. Some of them are individuals, or others are enterprises, and others are at the same time they are NPOs or other foreign-based foundations. But this, I mean, for the moment, we don't know exactly the amount of donations that at the end will come from abroad, but we are trying to monitor this, at least with our own members, to see what part of the donations are coming from domestic donors and what part are coming from other entities. But I think that we could make, and depending on the amount and the problems or tax burdens or administrative burdens that donors can face, maybe we can make a good case. At the end, Valencia is an area in Spain that many people from European countries and third countries are spending holidays. So it's normal that many European people can donate. But in this case, we have to monitor what is the amount or the final amount, or the amounts at least during a year, for example. But we will have to say where these donations are coming. I mean, from which countries, because in this case it's more how in these origin countries donations to Spanish foundations are treated. So, we will try to monitor, and in a few months show the case and see if at the end these donors from the different countries could apply or not these deductions, or what problems their fiscal authorities found when making the comparable test with the Spanish foundations.
Thank you, Isabel. And I think of course, such incidents then always create a very acute momentum to enable also cross-border philanthropy, and that sometimes open the doors for governments to also make processes potentially easier for a certain period of time because there is an acute need for action. And then this could potentially also, in the long run, once a procedure is tested, maybe lead also to a simplification overall of the issues and the questions. Yes, so I'm hoping and wondering if we can now maybe hand over still to Albert Radler for a short intervention. We know that the European Commission DG Taxud, they have been working also on staff working documents related to the Social Economy Action Plan, specifically looking at also the taxation of cross-border philanthropy. So that was very important work. Also from the level of DG Taxud, and there have been some also proposals and ideas around providing simplification through templates and so forth. So that is of course very important work with regard to future steps that can be undertaken.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Albert. Now we can hear you very well. I hand over to you.
Well, sorry for this. It was really difficult. So I was kicked out and I couldn't log on anymore. But thanks to my colleagues, so I'm back now. And just to mention that yesterday I contacted Hannah that I would have preferred to go to philea on the spot. And now I know why I did that. So just to give you a brief update on taxation. Well, we all know it's difficult. If we move a little bit back, 15 years ago, we had some landmark court decisions. These were already mentioned before. We've got the Stauffer case, we've got the Persche case, we have the Missionswerk case, and we had a lot of optimism because, as you know, taxation and philanthropy, it is a non-coordinated field within the EU law, so there's no EU law. So the basic fundamental freedom of free movement of capital applies. Besides that, we have unanimity, and we now know with 27 member states, this is a very, very difficult thing to achieve. So this was a little bit a door opener by the Court of Justice, who in 2007, 2008 made these huge, big landmark cases. And we had a lot of optimism. I remember that we already had been contacted many years ago. And then I left the field of taxation and I got back 10 years ago, and I had to discover that nothing really moved on. Because what happened? Yes, there were these landmark decisions, but the practical issues, they were so difficult. We already had been here, we heard about them as the facts of how to register a non-resident entity with another member state. So everything remains difficult. However, if we look back, now we are now mid-November 2024, and in the field of taxation, philanthropy, I think if we move back some years later, we will say 2024 will have been a good year, maybe even a very good year. Because many things happened. What are they? This is number one. We have got, as we already heard about, we have got the actions in the field of social economy. Mia already reported on that. Social economy goes a little bit further than philanthropy, because you will know we've got philanthropy. There is no market activity. Social economy, they go further. It's non-profit, but they are active on markets. So it's a little bit different, but many things are overlapping. We have these council recommendations, which are followed up quite closely by DG Ample. And then we have also the proposal for European Cross-border Association, which is a project by DG it's a project by DG Grow, which had been proposed last year and which is currently negotiated in Council and Parliament. And what I heard is that the outlook is rather positive. So here we have things moving. And then we have, secondly, we have the the activities from philea. I also would like to mention that. Philea had been, together with Fondation Roi Baudouin, together with Transnational Giving Europe, they had been constantly raising awareness, constantly reminding of the tax gaps which exist. And this constant effort sometimes also pays off, or it pays always off. And I think this was a amazing thing that philea had the possibility to present the case of taxation and philanthropy at the informal high-level working party for tax questions of the Belgian presidency, and to present it to all heads of tax administrations of all member states. So I think this is a huge, big achievement. Now, having made the presentations, is there real progress? We have to wait. But you always have to compare it with the situation if you had not had the chance. You had the possibility, and I'm sure it will pay off sooner or later. And then thirdly, also, we already heard it from several colleagues. I think there have been quite an interesting development in the field of legislation and of jurisprudence. First, we had the closing of infringement procedure. We had an infringement procedure from several foundations against Germany because of the reimbursement of excessive withholding taxes. This had been handed in some years ago. It was very well presented, was very clear cases. Someone will say, well, it took too long. Yes, it took some time, but in the end, if you present clear infringements, it is what the Commission needs to become active. And here we had a very good case presented by lawyers of a clear infringement, and it was rather closely followed up by the Commission. It was closed some weeks ago, and Germany actually had amended its legislation in spring. Now, today, the question of reimbursement withholding taxes should be the same for non-resident entities and entities. So I think this is a very, very big achievement. We also have a similar case for Denmark. So if you have, this is always the call for practitioners, if you have such cases, bring them to the attention to the Commission, raise awareness. If we have the cases, we also will be able to take action. And then there are also other cases before national courts. I just want to mention one case which I thought was rather striking. We have a German resident who made donations to a Swiss foundation. Everything is very clear cut. The question about comparability, it is there. It is the Swiss foundation would be charitable also under German law. So the facts are very clear. The only thing is Switzerland is not an EU member state. However, we have the free movement of capital. Normally, it also should apply to third countries. This case had been now with the first instance at the Finanzgericht München. It is now with the National Court. This would be one of the cases. I would say National Court should also refer to the Court of Justice. This is very interesting and will also have some ramifications. Having in mind, it is in relation with a third country, but still it should be very, very interesting. With regard to the social economy, we had our part in taxation. Mia also referred to it. We had one practical recommendation for member state, and this was the question of using standardized multilingual forms for certifying the donations cross-border. We made a recommendation, or a recommendation means the Commission is recommending member states to do something. It is not necessarily the recommendation, the Commission who takes up the ball. However, we happily will be involved in this case. We are in the process of kicking off the whole issue. We have been in contact with philea. Also here, the call to member states. It would be very interesting to have the full collection of the forms which are actually used by the member states, by the tax administrations, in order to certify the donation given by a donor to a public benefit purpose entity. So if you have, this would be the call for you to contribute. If you could send such forms to Hannah so that we would have the full picture. I have one last question or one last issue. It is regarding the Letta report. Enrico Letta, the former prime minister from Italy, he prepared a report for the Commission. He didn't make it referring to philanthropy, but he made some general statements regarding industrial policy, and his big fear or his big concern was that the internal market could be better. One of the issues is with all the crises we had over the last years, the Commission could be stricter in enforcing EU law. Member states have the tendency to have reintroduced some patterns, some obstacles, some hindrances. So the internal market, it could fare better. And he identified what is kind of interesting. He identified one of the issues, the use of directives by the Commission, by the Union. The directive means that you have got a common set of rules which need to be transposed by the 27 member states. So in the end, you have 27 different legislations in the member states, which hopefully fully transpose the directive, but you also need a strict Commission who enforces, who monitors, and also enforces the coordinated application of such directives. And he also has a very, very good proposal. Now I'm closing my eyes to have a vision or to dream. And his proposal would be skip the directives, use a 28th measure, and this is one set of rules which is directly applicable within the whole European Union, which would be the massive use of EU regulations. Now, if we look back, we already had that. We know this very well in the area of philanthropy. We had the statute for a European Foundation, which did not fly, unfortunately. Now we have the European Cross-border Association in the form of a directive, which is better than nothing. But we all know it would have been even better if it had been a regulation. We had the regulation or the proposal for regulation for associations for many years pending at council. It did not fly. So this, as a little word for closing up, it remains difficult, but we make our small progress. We continue, we will work on that, and it will improve. It will improve. Well,
thank you very much, Albert. I think you touched upon many things, in particular also the call to all of us to provide you with further information on certificates. So we've already had a legal affairs committee where we were collecting some cases which we forwarded to you. So we will continue trying to collect more of these to help you also provide further assistance to the member state level. And if we can proactively make some suggestions on such templates or certificates, I think that will be a practical step, but potentially a lower hanging fruit than a directive or a regulation on the topic. But as you have seen, there was a question potentially in the chat post by Virginie Isumo. I do not know whether, Virginie, you're still in the room. Otherwise, I can read out your question that was indeed about why not have an EU directive on this topic? Of kind of a comparability status or around taxation issues. Albert, you partially answered that question already, that it's very difficult in the field of taxation, but if you want to have a final say, the floor is yours.
You know, it's we've got unanimity, and it is it's as a directive itself. We know member states, we know their hesitation in all issues regarding taxation. We unfortunately had recently again some bitter experiences in this field. If we table a directive, we must be quite sure that it will fly in the field of philanthropy, which is even more a national activity than other parts. Our feeling is that it will be very, very difficult to have really a unanimity. And then it is, of course, a question: do you invest political capital in proposing such a directive with being rather sure that it will not find approval by the council? So this is also
Yes.
always the question, huh? And
Yeah.
so the drafting of or proposing such a directive would not be difficult, huh? And well, it is a sound proposal, but it will not fly. It will not fly, and this
Thank
is
you,
why
Albert. I
what
think
we do.
also, as you mentioned earlier, learning from experience that the tax issue is very difficult because of the unanimity requirement. But nonetheless, we see good progress. You referred also to the infringement procedures that could still be launched also where member states are not in line with EU law. And that is also something that anyone can initiate such an infringement procedure. So that's also a call to all participants to consider where you are struggling, facing barriers, where the national law seems to not enable cross-border philanthropy or very difficult, that this is always a way to pursue.
Yeah.
Now we are coming to the end of our webinar. We do not have time to discuss all the questions that were posed. Some of them we responded in the chat, but there was very much interest also with regard to why is Luxembourg and Netherlands, why are these interesting cases? And that's something that indeed they have quite straightforward processes. And that's something that we would also further highlight towards the member states when they then work on their national strategies for social economy, when they implement also this idea of facilitating cross-border philanthropy. They could also look at good practices. How have some member states done it? Which are easy ways, which are blueprints potentially to change the systems and procedures to make it easier. So that's a call to action that we will certainly further pursue also as philea and the King Baudouin Foundation and TGE, because we believe that this could be a way forward if member states maybe have a competition of which government makes it the easiest for cross-border philanthropy. That's maybe a starting point. And then we also heard some interesting suggestions and ideas in the chat about a certificate similar to the US certificate, and that's potentially something to consider in the future. But as we say, it's step by step. We first need to make sure that member states are aware of the issue and they potentially amend their practices to make it easier. We can work on templates, on also multilingual, practical certification documents. So that's something that we will do, and we will, of course, remain visionary with a view that ultimately all member states will enable and ease cross-border philanthropy to then finally truly paving the way for a single market for philanthropy. So yes, we've come to the end of this webinar. I would like to thank all the speakers who contributed to this webinar, this session. We will be happy to share the slides afterwards and also the recording of the webinar. And do contact us if you want to also join our efforts towards the single market for philanthropy. And yeah, indeed, it's good progress made, and let's use the momentum which is there now. We have EU interest, we have interest by the member states, so counting on us that it's the momentum, we just have to use it all together. Thank you so much, and we end the webinar here. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.